Jack, what time is it?
Bull killing time!
What time is it?
Bull killing time!
I didn't hear you the first two times. What time is it?
It's bull killing time till the sun goes down!
Awesome. All right, let's go.
Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. This is episode number 171 with Michael Park. And Michael Park and I have done a little series here. The first series, episode 169, was on Michael's bow setup. Michael is a friend of mine. He has shot 50 elk with his bow and arrow. The part 2 series, episode number 170, was finding bulls on public land. And today we're going to talk about part 3 is going to be calling elk. And I think you guys are going to get a lot out of this episode. Before we get to that, I want to thank GoHunt.com for their title sponsorship of this podcast. Also remind you that they're doing a 30-day free trial exclusive for the J. Scott podcast listeners. All you got to do is go to GoHunt.com/JScott. Click on the blue free trial button, go through the steps. They will require a credit card, but they won't charge the credit card until after the 30 days. You can cancel anytime within the first 30 days to prevent being charged. If you have any questions at all, you can email freetrial@gohunt.com and someone from the GoHunt team will promptly respond. I also want to let you know that you can take advantage of some promo codes using the J. Scott promo code. PhoneScope, which makes engineered smartphone digiscoping adapters. Go to phonescope.com, use the JScott16 promo code, receive a 10% discount on all purchases. TheOutdoorsmans.com is the optics authority, and they make great tripods and mounting accessories. You can use the J. Scott promo code on their website and get a 10% discount on all products, or call them at 1-800-291-8065. Also, Wilderness Athlete, go to wildernessathlete.com, use the J. Scott promo code, that's all one word, and receive 10% off any order. Utah Hydrographics, they are in the water transfer printing service, and they can dip almost anything. You go to utahhydrographics.com and use the JScott16, all one word, JScott16 promo code, and get 10% off. Also, Western Hunter and Elk Hunter magazine doing a promotion right now. If you subscribe to the Elk Hunter or Western Hunter magazine, you will get the fall issue that has already been released totally free. They will send it right to your doorstep. Go to westernhunter.net and subscribe, and plug in the J. Scott, all one word, J. Scott promo code, and you'll get a free issue. Guys, let's get right to this episode with Michael Park. I want to thank you guys for your support. If you have any questions, you can email me at jscottoutdoors.com. Also follow on Instagram at jscottoutdoors. You can go to jscottoutdoors.com. The website's being renovated as we speak, but that's kind of the central hub to link out to YouTube and my Facebook and my Instagram. And all the different blogs and such there. So let's get right to this episode with Michael Park. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we've got Michael Park, good friend of mine. Has killed 50 elk with a bow and arrow. And we've already had 2 great episodes, one on bow setup, one on finding bulls on public land and how to hunt them. Michael has killed a elk in every state except for New Mexico, in the western U.S., and he's a great wealth of knowledge. I've been fortunate to be with him. The first year I met him in 1996, he had a tag in Unit 3C in Arizona, and in 2009 the gang got all together again, and we had a great time, and he killed a giant bull that scored 435 inches. Michael is a killer and knows a lot about killing elk, and looking forward to talking to him on this episode about calling elk and his strategies that he uses And I think it's important to note that, these strategies have held up over many, many states. So, Michael, how are you doing?
Pretty good today, Jay. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I want to talk specifically about calling and your strategy for calling elk. But first, elk cannot be called on public land, right? I'm kind of in a feisty mood today, I guess.
Oh, boy. If I had $1 for every time I heard that, I could buy a landowner tag in Nevada.
I want to talk about calling elk. I want to talk about your strategy. There's those out there that are cow callers. There's those out there that are buglers. There's some that do both. And I'm curious to get, if you had to categorize your strategy as far as calling, what would you categorize yourself as?
Boy, I do them both. Plus a third thing that, I think gets left out. Everybody's, they're a cow caller, they're a bugler. I'm a big fan of the bugle, and I'm a big fan of raking a tree. I'm more of a fighter than a lover.
Okay. And have you found that strategy works better in certain states than others, or does it always does the strategy seem to hold up all the way across the West?
It works everywhere. Plain and simple, it works everywhere. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, they just run from a bugle. They just run from a bugle." Well, yeah, if you're following them in the morning and they haven't got to bed, yeah, you think they're running, but they're just going to bed. And a lot of times people don't realize, they may, from their feed to their bed, they may go 2, 3, 4 miles, and you think they're running from you, but they're not. They're just going to bed. You follow those same elk to their beds and let them get settled and get the wind right and go in there. And, I mean, I think you've watched me do it before. I go in and just start stirring up the bee's nest.
Yeah, I think I can remember a bull particular before you killed your giant in 2009. We kind of dove into a little pocket of elk, and you kind of looked back at me and you did the old, like wet your finger and you're like, I'm going to stir it up, signal. And boy, did you ever, you stirred the pot.
Yeah, I mean, I like them to get to their beds. I like to hunt them in the middle of the day type of deal, if they're bugling at all, because they're not as apt to move. Everybody thinks the bull is always pushing the cows away, but I always think it's the exact opposite. I think here comes the lazy old bull pulling the cows away more than anything. But if you can get them to their beds and get them comfortable, you can call little bulls in, you can call herd bulls in, you can call them all in.
Okay, so how is your strategy? So we're talking primarily about kind of mid-morning, they're in their beds and they're settled and they're just sounding off. What are you going to do?
Let the thermals get totally turned around, so it's going to be a lot of times not till 11:30 that, I'll try and dive in above them and try and get as tight as I can get before I make the first sound. And a lot of times, try and get in tight and start out with just a lone cow call and see how the bull's reaction is to that. And a lot of times they won't do anything. But usually, if they're feisty at all, you can bugle when they're laying in their bed and they'll answer you. And, just basically build the tempo up and you'll get them up and out of their beds and you can call them right in. I've had better luck from 11 to 2 than I've had at daylight and dark.
So let me see if I got you straight. So you sneak in, you give them a cow call. A lot of times they don't even respond. Then you'll fire off a bugle, and then you'll judge their level of intensity from that bugle.
Right. That's exactly what I'll do.
And if they answer, if they hammer right on top of you, then what do you do?
Hammer right back.
And let's say they hammer right back. What do you do?
Same thing, right? Try and mimic them. Try and step on their toes. And a lot of times it'll take them getting up out of their, usually he'll bugle from his bed and it'll be this weak, half-hearted, reply and hammer him on that, and usually that gets him pretty perturbed, especially if, you're within, if the country's thick enough, if you're within 80 or 100 yards, he's usually going to get up and come because his cows are all laid up, and they're usually fairly spread out, so he's kind of got to put up a fight at that point.
And you would like to be how close to the elk, both the cows and the bull, when all this is going on?
70, 80, 90 yards if I can get there.
Okay. How do you get there when they're not really making noise? That's kind of the fine line, is how do you get in tight to elk that are bedded down, and how do you know when you're close enough?
Listen for sticks breaking. Usually if I've done my job right in the morning, I've watched them go to bed. Hopefully they went into not a giant patch of timber. And this comes again back to the country I like to hunt. I like to hunt them, in opener country. And if I can watch them go into a patch of trees and get the wind right, I can usually, get above them and sneak right down in on them and hopefully call them up.
Okay, so let's say you sneak in there and you cow call and there's no response. You bugle, and let's say they don't bugle right away and nothing, but they're there. Do you continue to pester them, or what's your strategy there?
Then I get a big stick and start beating on a tree.
How exactly do you think that raking, or how do you rake the most effectively in your mind in that situation? Like actually, what do you do?
Basically just pick up a pretty good sized solid stick off the ground and try and find a deader, a tree that's got some dead limbs, so you can kind of rub it around in it and break stuff off, and try and agitate the bull that, hey, I'm bull over here and I'm coming in to steal all your cows from you, and that'll usually make him want to fight a little bit.
Okay, so will you bugle then as soon as you get done raking? Will you bugle, or will you bugle right before you rake, or what's your normal protocol?
Usually after I rake, I'll bugle.
And if he fires right up, then do you just get right back after him? Yep. Or do you go back to raking?
No, I'll usually, if he, I'll rake, I'll bugle. If he hammers back on that, I come right back over the top of him with some grunts on top of it, to show some intensity. And most times, there's usually one more bugle and he's coming.
Speaking of bugle, I know you and Casey use a different type of bugle than a lot of people do, and quite honestly, it's like, I don't even know that it's a secret, because a lot of people can't really blow it as good as you guys do. But what are you using that's worked for you for so many years?
Using a call made by a guy in LeGrand, Oregon, by the name of Dan Clore. It's called Deep Timber Sounds. Really good call if you can figure out how to blow it. A real tough call to learn how to blow, but I think it's one of the things that separates myself from a lot of people. Just because the elk don't hear it so much, it's not the doo-doo-doo-doo-doo type of call. It sounds real elky. You can really get on it. You can really crank on it, and match intensity to intensity with elk with it.
And chuckle pretty darn good on it too.
Yep.
Okay, so I like that strategy. I totally agree with you on the raking aspect of it. And it's amazing how you can really turn elk on by raking, even if you never even bugled.
Absolutely.
I've called them in or raked them in by just, my buddy Giannis was down in Arizona with me, and he loves to rake. And I mean, he will literally annihilate like a whole dead juniper tree. Like he'll be, just watch this, and he'll just be breaking every limb and stamping on them with his feet and just making as much racket as he can. Do you find that really aggressive raking works best, or just kind of medium, letting them know you're there and kind of up and down on a branch?
No, I have a feeling you'd find me and Giannis are, kind of the same on this. I beat things up. I throw rocks. I stomp my boots and, make as much noise as you can, because if you've ever been in tight on a bull when he really gets after a tree, holy smokes, it sounds like lumber's flying. So, don't be afraid to make a little noise.
Yeah, and okay, so we've heard your bugling strategy. I want to talk about a location strategy as far as trolling either in the mornings or in the early afternoons when nothing's really shaking, you're walking down a ridge. What is your standard protocol for just locating elk?
If I'm going to hunt a ridge and it's timbered up to where I can't use my eyeballs much, I'm going to start with usually a single cow call and then a couple more. And that's just in case there's a bull close by and maybe he's a lover and not a fighter, and, maybe he's just going to come running up to something soft like that. And then it'll be just a nice, pretty, what I'd call a pretty bugle, I think everybody has a termination or a location bugle or something like that. And just a nice, clean bugle with not a bunch of grunts on it, and see if you get an answer. And a lot of times, the bulls will answer you just kind of, me too, hey, I'm over here. And, then you can cook up a strategy from that, from what he's doing. You can gauge him, his temperament, and go from there. But, subtle cow calls, what I think everybody would call a contact type of a bugle, if I'm just covering country trying to get a response.
And 3 bulls answer, and one's over there chuckling like an ape, and one's over there pretty bugling, and one sounds like a dink. What do you do? What are you going to do there?
Depends on what kind of bull I'm hunting. If I'm looking for any bull, I'll look at, which way is the wind blowing, which one is the best approach, how can I approach all 3 of them. If I booger up the first one, I can roll into the second one without, boogering him up before I've screwed up the first one. Just to try and get opportunity out of all 3 of them if you're just hunting bulls. If not, try and somehow lay eyes on them so you can plan your attack.
So in other words, if the wind is in your face and you hear 1, 2, 3, you're going to take the approach, if you're just trying to kill a bull, let's work the first one, then we'll go work the second one, then we'll go over and mess with the third one.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, 3 times the opportunity versus going after just the one of them. I mean, if you're new at the game and you're happy with any bull, line them up and go from one to the next to the next.
Okay, with your strategy of bugling and being a good bugler like you are, what about the thought, you've heard it on public land a lot, where guys are just not really good buglers? Do you think if you don't sound realistic, do you think that can actually work against you? And would you tell people to use more of the cow calling if their bugle is just not very good, or would you say stick with the bugle?
I'd say practice more. And it depends. I mean, I've heard some bulls you get later into September, around the 20th. By then, their voices are blown out. And I was listening actually to one of your last podcasts, and they had a bull there were describing what he was doing, and I'm thinking, well, it's the 21st or 2nd of September. His voice is rough like that because he's been bugling for 3 weeks already. So I'd say practice. And if you're still gagging and choking, cow call. And then raking a tree. I mean, you can make your bull sounds by just raking a tree and drive them completely insane at times.
I think, too, sometimes when you rake a tree and don't even bugle, they're so curious to know who's got the audacity to be over there raking a tree and then not give me the pleasure of bugling. They almost come just because they're like, why isn't that bull bugling? He's over there showing, trying to assert some dominance by, saying I'm over here raking, but he's silent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty deadly.
Have you seen big bulls and little bulls rake trees yourself?
Yeah. Little bulls, 3, 4 pointers, I've seen them do it. Clear up to that giant one I shot. I mean, the day before I killed him, he was tearing a tree up, and if he would have just backed out of the tree, I could have killed him the day before.
Seems like it was about 21 yards, and I was watching through the binoculars just because I was completely helpless on the other side of the ridge watching all this go down, thinking, you're going to kill this bull. You know, I'm sitting there, I got you and him in the binos, and he's just raking a tree. And I think, as soon as he makes one step, Michael's going to kill him. And then the next thing, obviously, the bull winded you. But it's just crazy to think that, you know, a bull like that, you know, everyone thinks, well, what did he do different? Well, he's just a bull elk. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're a 5-point or a giant, they're still elk, and they're still going to act like elk, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about cow calling. And do you like a mouth call? Do you like an external, like an external bite and blow type call? And also your, deep timber sounds, you can cow call on it as well.
Yeah. For the most of my cow calling, I like diaphragms. And specifically, I'm using one of Rocky Jacobson's, I think it's a yellow mellow mama or something like that. And I think the last time I was in Arizona, you gave me a baggie full of Steve Chappell's calls, and I've actually weeded a couple out of there and that have worked really good, and they haven't wore out yet, so I've been using those. And then I pack around, a Carlton fighting cow call. I mean, what we call a duck call. I don't have a lot of faith in it, but I've seen times where, for some reason, that, you know, seems to be what they're biting on that day, and, you know, it excites a bull on some certain day. So I pack that around, and then, you know, I can also cow call on my bugle some, and it's another different sound. So I pack that around with me all the time, and not afraid to use the three of them, but my preference is a diaphragm. I think it sounds the best.
Yeah, and you are good with all of them. I haven't heard you use the duck call much, though.
No, it's not my favorite. If I pull the duck call out, I'm desperate. I can't get him to bite on anything but, so then I'll try it.
I think there was a point when I called the bull in with the duck call, and you kind of looked back and said, I didn't think that actually worked.
Well, I'd heard about it, but I'd never seen it until that point, and it's like, okay, I'm not too proud to say I better get one of those.
I better get one of those. That's awesome. That's fun. Well, this has been good talking about calling elk. I want to talk to you on the next episode about shot execution under pressure. But it's as always great to talk to you. Great to kind of get into the mind of someone that's killed 50 elk with a bow, and hopefully this year will be number 51. It'll be an Oregon bull, and maybe Idaho if you're fortunate to get over there and hunt as well. But thanks for coming on, and I'll look forward to talking in the next episode about shot execution.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, bud.